Everyone, the clerk has advised me that we have quorum. I'm Councillor Alejandra Bravo, and I'm the chair of the Economic and Community Development Committee. We have now to proceed to meeting 30, and we're calling it to order. Welcome all. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room 1. This meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. At this time, it's always a good opportunity to acknowledge the land we're on, and land acknowledgements are really about stating our obligations, not just to the land, but to each other, and I think it's a wonderful way to start this last meeting of the Economic and Community Development Committee by recognizing that for thousands of years, Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, Wendat peoples have been on this land, and that the City of Toronto has a treaty with the Mississaugas of the Credit, Treaty 13, and that's binding in relation to what we owe to each other. If you're registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Economic and Community Development Committee page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Members, the city clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on CMP. The clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your devices. I also want to remind you to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at ecdc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, may I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our meeting on June 9, 2026? Councillor Mantis, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So I rarely take time at the beginning of the meeting to speak as chair, but I will do that today for a couple of reasons. First of all, just to acknowledge that we had a terrible tragedy in Toronto on Saturday, and we will be addressing some of the questions and concerns that regarding the ongoing festivals in our city and supporting them, and at the same time, just to recognize that 2 young lives were lost, and they're very close to my community. My son was in class with one of the 2 victims, and they both grew up in and around Davenport. So I know Councillor Matlow and I have been working on bringing something to this committee that we'll be adding it to the agenda shortly as we'll continue to work on it. Secondly, I just want to thank all the first responders who showed up, the members of the community, and I can tell you that last night, before the vigil that was held very close to the site of where the shooting took place, people were there, both in solidarity, with a lot of love, and that area of St. Clair was full because people poured out to show that, this community, the city continues to be a place where we can have peace and joy, and that while we have work to do, we can be stronger together. So I also want to say this has been a tremendous privilege for me being chair of this committee, and I want to thank the clerks who have, from the first day, helped me to understand how to do this job, to move a procedure forward and to make sure that we're deliberating and adopting policy in the best possible way. And I want to thank all of the divisions that report into this committee, all the staff time. It's a wonderful vantage point to see just how much care, attention, and hard work goes into all of the reports that we see here, and how much we have a role to ensure that implementation, deliberation can be supported by staff. So thank you, all of you. I'm not going to name all of the division heads or the divisions, but I also want to end on a kind of a cheerful note to say thank you. The shelter division made me this T-shirt, as you'll see, ECDC high voltage, and on the back are all the tour dates are actually the meetings that we had in 2025. So thank you very much for that. So this, as we're going to move on now. So we're not ready for adding our new business yet. I don't know. Okay, yeah, so we'll come back to adding new business, but we're going to proceed to the agenda review now. And we have, first of all, we're going to start with EC 30.1, Toronto Fire Services 2025 Annual Report. And we have a presentation and a speaker for that, so we're holding that. EC 30.2, Building Local Capacity to Deliver Childcare in High Inequity Neighborhoods Update. That's held for a speaker. EC 30.3, Status Update, Implementation of Ombudsman Toronto's recommendations on the city's handling of resident social assistance overpayments. That's held for a speaker. EC 30.4, Lower Don Parkland Indigenous Naming Progress Update. I'm holding that for Councillor Fletcher, who will be joining committee today. EC 30.5, Changes to Business Improvement Area Boards of Management. Are there any questions, or would anyone like to hold that? That's moved by Councillor Moyse. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. EC 30.6, follow-up on 2026 EC 27.1, refining the definition of an entertainment establishment, nightclub in Toronto Municipal Code Chapter 545 licensing. That's held for a speaker. EC 30.7, responses to 2026 EC 26.4, consumer protection, ticket price gouging, and booking accommodation hidden fees. And that is here for receipt. Would anyone like to move that? Councillor Mantis, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. EC 30.1, improving the usability of Old City Hall as a filming location. I'm also holding that for Councillor Fletcher. EC 30.9, considerations for Toronto membership in the Association francophone des Municipalités de l'Ontario. And that is a transmittal from the Toronto Francophone Affairs Advisory Committee, of which I'm chair. I have a motion. So the City of Toronto is rejoining LEFMO, and this motion directs that the members of council be appointed by council at the striking committee, that the staff member be selected by the city manager, and that up to 2 public members who served as members of the 2026 Toronto Francophone Advisory Committee be selected by the general manager, economic development and culture, for addition to Toronto's representation on LEFMO. Are there any questions of the mover? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. My item as amended? That is also carried. Thank you very much. On y va. EC 30.10, exploring the feasibility of a French language services portal. And there is a transmittal here and on the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. EC 30.11, Théâtre, français, Toronto, that is also being held for Councillor Fletcher. EC 30.12, review of Nightlife hub model, I'm holding that. And EC 30.13, basketball nets at City Toronto Parks and city-owned and operated facilities. Sorry, just give me 1 second. I'm going to hold that. EC 30.14, exploring options to recoup city enforcement costs for challenging properties. I have a motion. This has to be added to new business. All those in favor of adding this to the agenda? Thank you, and I'll hold that down. So let's proceed to our first. Oh, thank you. We have other new business. We display it. This one is follow-up on MM 4261, suitability of the standard theater as a live music venue. All those in favor of adding it to the agenda? Opposed? That's carried. The second item to add is supporting King Street West as a cultural and business destination. All those in favor of adding it to the agenda? Opposed? That's carried. That's a letter from Councillor Malik, Deputy Mayor Malik, and I'll be adding, as I said, another item as when the clerks are able to finish. So now we're going to go back to our first item and invite Fire Chief Jim Jessup to give us a presentation on EC 30.1 Toronto Fire Services 2025 Annual Report.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair. Chair Bravo, councillors of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an overview of the achievements of Toronto Fire Services outlined in the 2025 Annual Report. I'm going to start by acknowledging my Deputy City Manager, Kate Bazzo, who has worked extremely closely with Toronto Fire Service in her first year and has been nothing but supportive and understanding through some very challenging incidents, but also very open to hearing new ideas. So thank you, Kate. I also want to acknowledge Steve Delozio from the Toronto Professional Firefighters Association Executive Board, who is here today. Again, that type of visible presence just demonstrates the relationship that Toronto Fire Service has with their association. That is something that we continue to work on collaboratively together, and it's certainly something that will help us move forward together on. So as per the Toronto Municipal Code, Chapter 79, Fire Services is required to submit to Council an overview of our performance and activities on an annual basis. We are the largest and most complex fire service in Canada, and we are the city's only all-hazards emergency response organization, operating 125 fire trucks out of 84 fire stations and approximately 20 satellite locations for our mechanical, fire prevention, communication, and administrative services. The 3,379 staff within TFS provide the city with world-class fire protection services, and we are the largest municipality in North America with an accredited fire service. This slide provides an overview of some of our core services, which will be expanded on subsequent slides. The fire service delivers along the 3 lines of fire protection as set in the Fire Protection and Prevention Act. That is public education, enforcement of the Ontario Fire Code, and of course, emergency response. Toronto Fire Service had a very busy year responding to over 170,000 emergency incidents and conducting fire code inspections at over 9,000 unique addresses. We exceeded our response time target for effective firefighting force, having enough resources to fight a fire or technical rescue in 95% of our incidents. Our target is 90%. As lithium-ion batteries continue to rise, Toronto Fire Services is educating the public on safe use and disposal while advocating for stronger regulations to reduce risk. This is an overview of our structure. So to the left, we have the Community Risk Reduction section that is currently being led by Acting Deputy Chief Marla Freebay, which provides all of our inspections, public education, fire investigations, and fire engineering for the City of Toronto. Second division is our administrative and mechanical maintenance section, which is led by recently promoted Deputy Chief Therese Chen. Therese is responsible for more than $500 million operating and capital budgets, all of their finance support functions, including payroll. She also oversees all of our facilities, new construction, fleet, and equipment. The next portfolio is communications, technology, and organizational performance. That is being led by recently hired Deputy Chief Ian Williams, who manages our emergency call taking, dispatching, data analytics, decision support, technology, and all of our day-to-day technology requirements. Our communications team initiated or processed over 600,000 calls for service in 2025 and exceeded the standard for call processing time of 1 minute and 4 seconds, meeting that target 94% of the time. Our 90th percentile performance was 54 seconds, so incredible work by our team. The technology team continues to support Toronto Fire in the implementation of next generation 911, cybersecurity, and of course, we'll speak later more about a large program called the TRIP program, the Toronto Radio Infrastructure Program, that Deputy Williams and his team, along with our colleagues at paramedics and police, will be looking into over the next decade. The final portfolio is our Operations, Training and Technical Operations Division, led by Deputy Chief Paul Fitzgerald. This is our most public-facing division. This is all of the fire trucks responding. Our technical operations team includes all the training requirements for specialty apparatus, such as high-angle rescue, trench, structural collapse, hazardous material calls, CBRNE calls. The training division facilitates training for all of our staff, including routine training, emergency medical training, recruit training, and more importantly, in the last couple of years, pending passage of Ontario Regulation 343-22 from the province, mandatory certification training for all firefighters in the Toronto Fire Service. This division also supports, as the chair alluded to, the Toronto Police Services Public Order Unit, through a partnership that includes joint planning and coordinated response efforts, along with our colleagues at Toronto Paramedic Services. And again, Toronto Fire Services operates the only certified CBRNE, so chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive response program in the country, and also manages the largest and most technical urban search and rescue team in Canada that can be deployed at the request of the province of Ontario. Public education. The delivery of public education is mandated by the Fire Protection and Prevention Act. This slide highlights a number of our achievements this year, including 339 high-rise fire safety presentations, delivering public education to over 35,000 school-age children, conducting over 300 education sessions for older adults, and launching the first pilot program focused on culturally appropriate fire safety for Indigenous youth. The team also coordinates the annual Fire Prevention Week, and this year again the theme was smoke alarms, making them work, and we have hosted an open house at our academy which was attended by over 2,000 residents. Lithium-ion batteries. I have publicly stated this is the greatest public fire safety risk growing in the City of Toronto. In 2025, the number of lithium-ion battery-related fires in Toronto was 62 compared to 29 in 22. This represents a 214% increase. Toronto Fire Services, with the full support of the Committee and Council, has implemented the following mitigation initiatives to address this growing public safety risk associated with unregulated and uncertified lithium-ion batteries. We run an annual public education campaign. We formed a lithium-ion battery working group with internal and external stakeholders, including solid waste, transportation services, and amongst many others. We've developed public education presentations and materials. We have done and commenced intergovernmental work with both the federal government and the provincial government at the direction of Council. Thank you, Chair, for that. We've also sent in a request to the Ontario Fire Marshal for further work to be done on their Technical Advisory Committee. And we support public and private building owners in developing mitigation strategies for their buildings. Most notably, we work very closely with Sean Baird and his team at Toronto Community Housing. The TFS encampment team. Toronto Fire Services has intensified its outreach to persons experiencing homelessness as part of the city's interdivisional protocol for encampments in Toronto. Since 2020, Toronto Fire Services has reallocated approximately 20% of our public education staff and directed them to engage residents, unhoused residents living outdoors, delivering core fire safety guidelines to focus on several critical life safety measures. Public educators work alongside our colleague at Shelter and Support Services, Streets to Homes, and the Encampment Office to bridge any fire safety gaps and support the transition of residents to indoor shelter when possible. In 2025, Toronto Fire Services provided education to over 2,000 residents living in encampments, visited over 1,000 sites, and identified and facilitated the removal of over 172 fire safety hazards. Additionally, following any fire incident at an encampment, Toronto Fire Services has developed a rapid response team to conduct on-site inspections and assessments, deliver target education, and to enforce under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act when it meets a threshold that causes a risk to those, the community, or our responding firefighters. The work that the encampment team has done this year needs to be applauded. The collaboration led by the Deputy City Manager with Shelter and Support Services and other city divisions, we have seen 78 fewer fires in encampments in 2025 compared to 2024. That is a 37% reduction in encampment fires based on the collaboration and based on Toronto Fire reallocating resources from within. Fire prevention and fire code enforcement. The division conducts inspections to enforce the Ontario Fire Code. The Ontario Fire Code is the backbone of effective fire prevention and a major factor in reducing the loss of life and property. We saw that recently at the fire at 1420 Victoria Park, where the fire doors held and the north tower of that building remained completely intact compared to the damage caused on the south tower. Toronto Fire Service inspectors conduct fire safety inspections in all buildings within Toronto, and we address violations of the fire code and other fire safety hazards within our independent authority under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act. In 2025, Toronto Fire Services conducted over 9,000 inspections at unique addresses, resulting in identifying over 17,000 fire code violations and having them corrected. In addition, over 1,000 charges were laid against owners and/or occupants of properties. 95% of all residential high-rise buildings were inspected, as well as 99% of all vulnerable occupancies, which would include long-term care homes, nursing homes, and hospitals. Our most public-facing, of course, is our emergency response. So emergency response crews are deployed, as I noted, on 125 trucks, fire trucks from over 84 fire stations across the city on a 24/7, 365 days a year. We respond to emergencies that include fires, rescues, medical emergencies, hazardous materials incident, and other disasters, including more recently and more frequently extreme weather events. In 2025, Toronto Fire Service operations responded to over 174,000 individual emergency incidents. That, as has been trending, is another 1.1% increase in 2025 over 2024. Call processing time, turnout time, travel time, and total response time are key performance indicators for Toronto Fire Service, and we measure against them, and we have taken them and drawn from them and publicly reported them to Council over the last number of years from the industry-leading National Fire Protection Association. Our overall goal is to be arriving on scene of an incident within 6 minutes and 24 seconds, 90% of the time. We have achieved that at 76% of incidents in 2025, and as noted, our goal is 90%. I am proud to say we have exceeded the second key performance indicator of effective firefighting force, so the balance, bringing the number of staff required to perform critical tasks at all incidents to 95% of all emergency incidents. We are constantly working on improving our total response time and effective firefighting force performance, because arriving seconds will absolutely change outcomes. Our public order unit. The Public Order Unit is a Toronto Emergency Services Joint Operations Unit led by the Toronto Police Service, and we provide support at all large-scale events, demonstrations, civil unrest. We have 100 members that are trained annually by the Toronto Police Service in crowd dynamic, public order operations, and specialized response procedures. We provide fire suppression, decontamination, and medical support within the Toronto Police Public Order Unit, along with our colleagues at Toronto Paramedic Services. Of course, you will have noted the number of protests in 2025 that we have been out with supporting the Toronto Police Service in keeping the city safe. We responded to over 50 call-outs in 2025. This unit played a large role in FIFA, as well as the Toronto Blue Jays and all other major festivals. Recruitment and outreach. TFS is committed to building an increasingly inclusive and positive workplace culture that reflects the diversity of the population we serve. A large part of this is our work within the community. With council support, we reconstituted the TFS recruitment and outreach team a few years ago. And in 2025, they attended over 300 events across the city, reaching over 69,000 residents, including 19 specific events within Toronto community housing, which included career fairs, community outreach, and presentations. Toronto Fire Service works with our partners on new opportunities to be in the community and promote Toronto Fire Service as an employer of choice. In 2025, we were excited to partner with Toronto Community Housing to host 150 youth from their Youth Works summer program for the second annual Day in the Life at the Toronto Fire Academy. The youth spent the day with Toronto Fire Service staff learning all about the different careers that Toronto Fire Service has to offer and got to see demonstrations of some of the skills firefighters need. In 2025, some of our event highlights included Black History Month open house and community outreach at local shopping malls in partnership with the Toronto Fire Services Black Staff Network, marching alongside the Toronto Fire Pride Network, Toronto Fire Service staff and their families at the Toronto Pride Parade. Toronto Fire Services was invited to be the Grand Marshal of the Toronto Caribbean Grand Carnival alongside the Toronto Fire Service Black Staff Network. We recognize National Truth and Reconciliation and Every Child Matters movement with decals on our fire trucks throughout September, as well as a fire versus police lacrosse game to reflect the day organized by the Toronto Fire Service lacrosse team affiliated with the Toronto Professional Firefighters Association. Very proud to also say that of the 207 operational recruits hired in 2025, 37.9% of them self-identified as a member of an equity deserving group. Looking forward, the Toronto Radio Infrastructure Project is mission-critical voice radio communication system used by Toronto's police, fire, and paramedic services. It is equipment at more than 30 sites, 7,500 radio subscribers, 9,800 first responders, and 500 call takers and dispatchers. The TRIP components include the voice radio communication used by emergency services over a 15-year contract between 2014 and 2029 with Motorola Canada. That contract is coming due very shortly. Toronto Fire Service is the lead to begin renewing procurement, and we have started working with our Chief Procurement Officer, with CISO, with TSD, with Toronto Police, and Toronto Paramedic Services. Work to be done in 2026 includes a major upgrade to the TRIP radio system to ensure it remains fully supported through 2029, enhance cybersecurity and maintain access to critical security upgrades, upgrade core system components to improve reliability and availability of emergency communications, replace aging technology in the system's central communication hubs to reduce the risk of hardware failures. The second theme on looking forward are staffing challenges. Toronto Fire Services continues to manage daily operation staffing challenges and is making every effort with the full support of my Deputy City Manager, Chief People Officer, and Chief Financial Officer to maintain the 125 fire apparatus in service each day. These pressures are primarily related to WSIB claims and legislated leaves, compounded with the pending number of retirements. Toronto Fire Services continues to closely monitor these trends, adjust as needed, and bring forward staffing considerations as required to ensure the service remains well-positioned to deliver adequate and effective fire protection services to Torontonians. The final theme on looking forward is our total response time. As Toronto continues to grow and densify, Toronto Fire Services is proactively planning for the impact on future call volumes and evolving emergency response demands across the city. Toronto Fire Service will continue to bring forward recommendations to City Council to ensure that capital investments, station infrastructure, staffing, training, and technology needed to provide adequate and effective fire protection services are in place. We are proactively advancing station planning with Creatio and CREM, including evaluating future station locations and capacity to ensure infrastructure keeps pace with the needs of our growing and evolving communities. Long-term service planning across the service also includes plans to acquire 2 new high-rise apparatus to support the unique demands of Canada's most vertical city. As in previous years, Toronto Fire Service continues to see an increase in travel time and total response time, which is an ongoing challenge, influenced primarily by factors including call volume increase and unit availability to respond. We are actively monitoring these measures in place to support improvements to response times, including collaboration on traffic preemption initiatives and planned station development in growing communities. Chair, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to members of committee. Again, I want to thank the Deputy City Manager for her full support during a very busy and challenging 2025. And I want to thank Laurel for sitting beside me last minute and advancing the slides. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. We do have a speaker on this, so we'll hear from the speaker and then we'll come back for questions. Is Arnold Margulis here? Oh, you can stay there. They're
thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to committee, Arnold Margulis. Hello.
Yeah, hi. Do you hear me?
5 minutes.
Okay, do you hear me?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I appreciate the opportunity to provide some comments, and I have to admit that the fire services notably improved for the last few years after the new chief was assigned, and I can see it in our Toronto Seniors Housing building, where regularly they conduct inspections and they ensure that contractors also do the proper work to ensure that all the systems are working properly in terms of fire protection. However, I wanted to also identify the areas where the fire service can be improved. In particular, in case of the fire services are responsible for responding to all hazards in the city, including chemical contamination, biological contamination, etc. But there are only 2 hazardous protection vehicles in the entire city. So most of such calls are responded by regular fire crews who are equipped only with carbon monoxide meters. So some landlords, as you probably know, they were, abusing so-called eviction process. And when it was stopped by the city, they started, looking for other avenues to improve, speed up tenants' turnaround, including, and also they retaliate people who complain about, deficient services. For example, in our building, when I complained to MLS about the shutdown ventilation in the building, shutdown water in common areas, and other similar things, the local staff simply drilled holes through the floor from the above unit above mine, and encouraged the tenant to continuously contaminate my unit every night with toxic chemicals. So, and in that regard, I faced the services of the fire department team. And again, as I said, it's only emergency services. They arrive on the scene about in 10 minutes, but the landlords, and their cronies are evasive enough. They contaminate periodically, not continuously, and sometimes the level of contamination subsides, but it's still notable. But the fire services, they don't respond. They come to your unit, they show you carbon monoxide meter, and says, you see, everything is cool because carbon monoxide meter shows nothing. and they trying to basically to fool you that you know, they are responsible for all range of chemical contaminants, which are not measured by this meter. They are also obligated by the law to investigate the source of contamination on the scene immediately, including visiting the suspected units, but they don't do it. They prefer just to leave the scene, and unfortunately, because of this, the violation continues. So also the landlords regularly contaminates common areas at night in order, you know, to speed up tenants turnaround and also to full law enforcement, including fire services. And even when they register that there is a chemical contamination in the elevators, in the building entries, and in the stairways, basically preventing evacuation in case of emergency of the elderly people, they don't do much to investigate it. So the other thing is the fire prevention services in our area. Sometimes they kind of cooperate in an improper way with the landlord and refusing to do in-depth investigation of what's going on, you know, in the units that when the resident complains that they are subject to chemical contamination. So this happens in my case, and you know, the fire prevention, they didn't do proper job in sealing the holes, ensuring that even in case of fire, the carbon monoxide would not proliferate to adjacent units through the holes made in the ceiling of my unit. So, as a result of all this criminal activity, several tenants, to my understanding, died, with contributing factor being chemical contamination, and several other tenants ran away and now live with relatives while continue to pay for their units adjacent to my unit. So unfortunately, you know, the fire department role in participating in such, you know, hazardous incidents should be greatly improved. And I'm kindly asking the fire chief to respond to my particular deputation, showing that you can improve the service. And also, I wanted to notice that there should be better cooperation between public health and the fire department in terms of you know, protecting population from chemical hazards and enforcing environmental health.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you so much for coming to committee today. That is our speaker, and now we're going to questions of staff. I have Councillor Moyes and the Vice Chair, Councillor Carroll.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief Jessup, for your presentation. I always look forward to your presentation every year and a report. We should rename Toronto Fire Service Toronto Ambassador Service. And, you know, if it was up to me, you get all the budget that you need. I know Budget Chief Carroll may feel differently about it. Yes, I know you do. Again, I try to take some notes during your presentations. I saw that in 2025, you had 192 calls for the year, which is extraordinary. Can you maybe tell us where the highest concentration of calls in the city? And also, as a follow-up question to that, I know that Toronto Paramedic Services have seen a significant increase in non-fatal overdose calls, which have clearly affect their call times for other calls. Has this impacted your division as well?
Thanks, Councillor, for the kind words. Through the chair. So the highest concentration of emergency calls is certainly in the downtown core. You know, our busiest fire stations in the city of Toronto are Station 314 at Yonge and Grosvenor, Station 332 at Adelaide, Station 312 at Yorkville. So certainly the downtown core are absolutely the busiest fire stations, not only in the city, but in the country. So that is where the predominant number of emergency responses happen. In terms, Councillor, of the overdose question, As you know, we've been meeting with your office, Public Health, with paramedics, with Dr. Murdy as well. Our data system right now through the standard incident reporting system that is set by the province does not have a separate code right now for specific overdoses. They just come in as medical calls. We actually are working on trying to extrapolate some of that data with respect to the overdose calls, that have been reported to have been increased. But as we have talked before, we're required to report through provincial data sets, and they had never contemplated this type of incident, at the province at the time these were set. So my data analytics team right now is trying to find a way through the narratives and through our reporting to try to pick out keywords such as naloxone or overdose, where we can actually provide you and committee and council some better data. I would suggest, though, that given we do respond alongside our peers at Toronto Paramedic Services, our data would be similar to theirs. Okay,
thank you. And also in regards to lithium batteries, you mentioned, again, there's I think this said a 35%, no, that was something else. But there's been an increase in calls for lithium batteries. And I know you mentioned too that there's a public education campaign that you are involved in and going to certain neighborhoods. Do you also have material in different languages for people when it comes to the education piece?
Through the chair, we do. The public education materials we have produced for lithium-ion batteries, as we do for all of our public education materials, is produced in 10 languages, Councillor.
Great. And I see that you've had 302 event recruitments in 2025, which is extraordinary. And again, I work with your recruitment team on a regular basis. And I do that with intention when I actually reach out to them. So do you do that with other councils as well?
We do. So obviously, through the chair, when we receive specific requests from councillors' offices for fun days or events or recruitment opportunities, based on our recruitment sizes team, we absolutely accommodate. And when we start our recruitment processes, we do engage, as I said, the team does engage the councillors' offices. So both on a proactive basis, but also on a reactive basis when that request come through to my office in terms of engaging with the community.
Also, I've seen that there's a 35% decrease in fires in encampments. And I'm just wondering, again, I work very closely with Gord Tanner and his team around the encampment team. In your opinion, do you think that the decrease is because there's less encampments in the city? Because there is.
Through the chair, my belief is we have seen a substantive decrease because of the work led by the Deputy City Manager through the interdivisional protocol. So the collaboration and cooperation between Toronto Fire, Shelter Support and Housing, Gord's teams, we are out daily, and there's probably not a weekend when I'm not texting the Deputy City Manager and the General Manager of Shelters with respect to a fire. But it really is that collaboration that has allowed us to attend the sites, work with the teams, but also independently exercise our own enforcement authority when the time is appropriate to either bring charges against building owners or order the removal of materials that would constitute an immediate threat to life or a fire hazard.
I'm going to squeeze one final question. Where are we with the electric fire trucks?
So, as you know, Councillor, we implemented 2 at stations 115 and 116 this year. My recommendation, which still stands, is we need to see how these perform over a number of seasons, with extreme weather both in the summer and in the winter, and we are closely monitoring the performance of the trucks. So far, they are performing. We do know other services in Ontario have had challenges with those, which is why I will be very cautious and considerate before I would bring forward a recommendation to Council to expand that program given the additional costs.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Councillor Carroll?
I do, yes. Sorry, I was looking at another item there.
Yep.
Yes, I did a bit of a dive through, and my lens was sort of things that we sometimes are not all on the same page about amongst council in making decisions. For fire inspections by ward, The percentage that you quote, when we look at it, and some people see 100%, some people see 83%, is that a percentage of every distinct property, or is that a percentage of a target that you had set for what you wanted to inspect?
So through the chair, it's a combination of both. So council, several years ago, directed us to inspect every high-rise building in the city of Toronto following the Grenfell Tower. Councillor, you'll recall that.
Right.
We also are mandated by regulation from the province to inspect every vulnerable occupancy. And then thirdly, Councillor, we are mandated by regulation to assess every complaint that comes in and every request for approval, and then based on that assessment to conduct an inspection under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act. So all of those are combined
Right.
into the respective wards, and that is where you would see those percentages.
So if they see 100%, they shouldn't jump to conclusions and say, hey, that's not true. There's no way they inspected 100% of my properties. It's 100% of the blend of those standards.
Through the chair, that is absolutely correct.
Okay. And then, Madam Chair, these might actually help the resident who's asking about some of the fire prevention stuff. When you go in to do the inspection, is it just, could a fire be started here, or are you looking at the carbon monoxide, et cetera? What's the level of evaluation that you do when you're there?
Through the chair, we are required under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act to inspect under two authorities. One, the risk of fire safety, and two, unsafe levels of carbon monoxide. Okay. The act was amended several years ago with the Hawkins-Ginac regulation from the retired firefighter from Burlington who lost his family. So that is the scope that the Fire Protection and Prevention Act sets for Toronto Fire Services in terms of our authority: fire risk and unsafe levels of carbon monoxide.
Okay. And then turning to what types of incidents you're responding to, and if I run out of time, Madam Chair, we can continue this conversation in executive, because you'll be back with the variance report, so you'll be available on the floor. But the highest growth in the calls you're making is in the medical area. It is growing by leaps and bounds. But I'm remembering back, one of the early promises of Next Gen 911 was that we were going to be able to start to make some adjustment to multitask response, because we would be able to, in much quicker times, evaluate who else is going to be able to make it to the site. Are they equipped for what they're going to find at the site? But it doesn't seem as if you're pulling back from medical response. It just continues to grow at sort of the same rate as the paramedics. So at what point does Next Gen 911 start to give us better data, better information in real time, so that fire halls can assess whether or not they need to mobilize?
So through the chair, that's a great question. So not only do we work closely with Toronto Paramedic Services and Toronto Police, as you well know, we also work now very closely with the Toronto Community Crisis Teams through DCM Campbell. So, Chair, the reason for the medical call increase, we are under probably the strictest oversight with our Sunnybrook Base Hospital Tiered Medical Committee. The decision on which medical calls to respond to does not come from myself as the fire chief. It comes from an assessment every year by 3 independent doctors that determine where Toronto Fire Services, based on our emergency medical responder training, which is the highest level of training in the country, can best save a life. And that basically comes down to anytime we can intervene 1 in 100 times. The reason we have seen an increase in our medical calls, number 1 is population growth, but number 2 also, Chair, is supporting Chief Chawla and Toronto Paramedic Services when they become overwhelmed. And Saturday night was a really good example.
Great, thank you for that. Yeah.
Right, so Toronto Fire Service, along with our peers, we had staff embedded that evening, and the first 4 victims were attended by my staff. Shortly thereafter, Deputy Jordanson called me and said, the hospitals were obviously overwhelmed, call volume was increasing, and then she gives us notice that they're going to start downloading more calls to us that are lower acuity, so the paramedics have the resources to respond to the higher acuity calls, the more life-threatening calls. So we gladly work with our partners. We gladly take on the additional calls to make sure that there are ambulances available for the highest level of emergencies in the city, and the Toronto Fire Service will tend to the lower acuity calls to make sure that that service is available.
Okay, I'm going to have some comments on that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I do have, thank you to my colleagues for your questions, and you've asked some of my questions, so focus on the recent changes to provincial rules, such as qualification for WSIB, that have resulted in more staff on leave than in the past. Is that correct? Can you explain that to us?
So, Chair, that is unequivocally correct. The changes that were passed for the right reasons, for WSIB, specifically PTSI, right now are causing Toronto Fire Services, and I would respectfully suggest police and paramedics as well, but specifically Toronto Fire Services, significant staffing challenges to maintain our fire trucks in service. It is something that the Deputy City Manager, CFO, and CPO and I talk about pretty much weekly. The numbers are staggering right now. So as of today, I pulled the numbers for July. Toronto Fire Service has 222 firefighters off on WSIB. To put that into perspective, we have 125 trucks available for dispatch every single day. That represents 15 of those out of service every single day just on WSIB. And we're not talking about other legislated leaves such as maternity and paternity and our ongoing vacancy challenge and retirements. So, Chair, WSIB is a significant challenge for Toronto Fire right now.
So as you indicated, these changes have been made for worker protection, for people who bravely serve our city in very difficult conditions. It recognizes PTSD and other injuries. But I understand that these have been made without any additional provincial support in terms of the impact it has on the fire service budget. Has there been, can you elaborate on what those impacts might be? Like how's this affecting the service?
No, that's a great question. So there are two from a financial impact on our operating budget. There is no secret. The variance report is out. There are two driving forces from a provincial perspective that are driving, I would say, a large portion of that number. Number one, Chair, again, is WSIB. So as of today, as I noted, there were 222 firefighters that are not able to respond. That means there are two choices. We either do not backfill those positions on overtime, or we run with 15 fire trucks out of service. The second piece, so there is a substantial cost based on the collective agreement of bringing firefighters in on overtime to make sure that we are providing adequate and effective fire protection services for Toronto. The second driving factor on provincial changes has been the mandatory certification and training regulation that was passed in 2022. Toronto is in a very unique position. Mississauga, Hamilton, Ottawa, possibly close to us, but no other city provides the level of technical rescue that we do based on our community risk assessment that is required by regulation and based on the unique needs of being the most vertical city in the country with waterways and subways and underground. And so the training and mandatory certification costs are north of $5 to $8 million now annually that we have to do by law, or we cannot provide those services to the citizens. And so you're talking services such as high-angle rescue. We saw the window washer the other day that fire services saved. You're talking swift water rescue, trench collapses, structural collapses, hazmat responses, CBRNE calls. So we have no choice. We have to certify and train our over 2,800 first responders. And Chair, that also includes all of our fire inspectors have to be certified, all of our communications and dispatchers, and we support the certification. It is the right thing to do, and we did for public and firefighter safety, but it is coming, especially on the technical piece, at a substantial cost to my operating budget.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the privilege of visiting the center and seeing the kind of equipment that you have, the level of expertise and the support you give to other first responders. So without provincial support and, you know, looking at the workforce cost impact, the training impact, we either need more funding from the property tax base, or it puts it in a position, or what you can't not deliver the service, because that's not really an option, is it?
So, Chair, Council sets the level of service, and I take direction from Council. That is the way the Fire Protection and Prevention Act reads. As your fire chief, I would not recommend reducing any level of service on the technical side of services such as vehicle extrication or trench, any of the technical rescues, and I would not.
You rescued a worker in my ward and from a trench collapse.
Yes.
And it was amazing to see what you brought. Sorry, I had to say that.
No, and that's a really great example. Without those skill sets, that worker would not be here today. And I certainly, as your fire chief, would not recommend reducing any level of service, given the increasing call volume and complexity that the firefighters are responding to.
I think you will be moving a motion to around this. Are there any other questions to speak? Councillor Carroll, Councillor Moyes, and I will speak with my motion at the end.
So I think we're probably going in the same direction because with respect, what I heard is that council is not setting the level of service. There are legislative requirements here that are the fastest growing areas that we're having to meet, and we're not setting that standard. And where we've put in place tech solutions to get around, those can't be used because of a requirement to respond. And so we don't have a lot of flexibility here. I would submit that if we looked at the incident response in the chart, if we were going to adjust service here, because we do have a challenge, as you will see in the quarterly variance, we got a challenge here meeting all of these. And the places we should go to address them, we actually can't. You have to respond with humans. And so we really have to get into a conversation that looks at the province understanding that if these are going to be required, if the health system has the ability to require us to be somewhere, we're clearly now moving into the realm of those things that are provincial responsibilities, which means we need more of a provincial partner here. If they're going to require our fire service to be so deeply embedded in medical response, then the cost share formula has to give. Something's got to give here. And even the WSIB guidelines, again, those are legislative, not municipal bylaw based, and they are a huge challenge. And Chief Jessup is right, for good reason. We heard for many years why those needed to be in place. But now that they are, we need partnership. And we can get through the next year or two, but as the retirements amp up, and they will in 28 and 29 here, as in all the first responses, we're going to be clearing the decks unless we have partners that allow us to max out the number of recruits coming in. Those are my comments. Although they're not very cheery, Madam Chair, I think they're probably simpatico with your thoughts and motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Moyes to speak.
Thank you, to you, Madam Chair. I just want to say thank you again to Chief Jessup and his entire team. They do extraordinary work each and every day. I can say to you in Toronto Centre, they are always there. I mean, I hear sirens all the time, and quite frankly, it's music to my ears because I know that they're heading to actually help people that may be in crisis, and often are. The chief mentioned in his report that there's been a substantial increase in lithium battery calls. A lot of them are in my ward in Toronto Centre, in St. Jamestown, in Regent Park. And again, these are life and death situations. a lot of the overdoses that have taken place in the last year since closures of supervised consumption sites, they have happened in my ward. I think 2 months ago, we had 15 overdoses in one park in one day. And jokingly, the neighborhood association said to me, it's just, keep a truck here in the ward, in this location, because they are here all the time. It was a bit tongue-in-cheek, but, it is the reality of today where, the fire service is essential service. And I have to say that, it's troubling to hear that 222 of firefighters are off on WSIB leave. And again, we can expect the existing firefighters to actually fill the gap because they themselves are overworked and experiencing fatigue themselves. It's a terrible situation, and I do hope that we continue to support the fire service through budgeting. Right? I know that the budget's tight. I understand it, but when it comes to fire service, I think we don't really have a choice. We have to put the money up front, and of course go to the provincial government and ask for funds. But if they don't come to the table, we have to do the right thing and make sure they're fully supported. I want to make sure that every fire station has a full complement all the time. This is a 24/7 job. They can't have any gaps in between. So again, I just want to say thank you out loud, and you have my full support always. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. To speak, Deputy Mayor Malik.
Thank you very much. I just want to speak briefly to echo the thanks that have been expressed here to Toronto Fire Services for that critical, important, life-saving work that you do in the active response to emergencies, but also through the incredible public education work. Some of it was mentioned around issues that have been top of mind and high priority, like the lithium-ion batteries, but also some of the most challenging and difficult issues that we face, particularly in our downtown communities, when it comes to safety in our public spaces, around some of our most unique transportation places underneath the Gardner, where folks are, experiencing homelessness and everything that we're grappling with in the city around that, and the partnership of Toronto Fire Services with Toronto Shelter and Support Services, with transportation services, in seeing how we can ensure that we are keeping our communities safe and saving lives as well. And that is, this is absolutely critical. I also want to echo the thanks to individual firefighters, to the administrators, to the support services, the Toronto Professional Firefighters Association, which is such an incredible partner in making sure that our city and our community remains safe. And that is a really important example, and that is something that, on council, from every part of the city, we take very seriously. And to echo what Councillor Moy said, continuing to put forward our support and our confidence in our Toronto Fire Services and the resources and supports that we need for firefighters and staff to be well, and to make sure that that they're well supported in the work that they do every single day. Thank you for this report, and thank you for that incredible work and our continued partnership.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Shen to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also wanted to thank Chief Jessup and all the fire services staff as well for doing fabulous work over the years. And I know about a decade or more ago, we had indicated ways in which we could look at increasing community outreach to recruit more diverse members to the force. And since then, we've come a long way. In fact, any major festivals, any place I go in Scarborough, we are able to see a recruitment team, a diverse recruitment team. They're actively engaging the community about the profession, also about fire safety, and interacting with children, and being positive role models, and creating that environment where the exposure happens for young people to be able to connect to the profession, because it is important for people who don't have family members or extended family members in the profession to be able to see others and connect. So I wanted to just, in addition to all the other comments made by other counselors around the service delivery, the frontline first response service delivery, the community engagement part, and the public education work that's being done by staff from fire services, and has been phenomenal. So just want to take this time to thank you for all the work, and looking forward to finding ways as a counselor from Scarborough as well to kind of continue to advance the call for more support to have adequate staffing in the suburban areas as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this item? I have a motion. While it's being displayed, you can read it here. It relates to the questions that I asked about the financial impacts of provincial legislative changes and regulations that have impacted fire service workforce costs, and that we need to understand more specifically the ongoing effects of that. And that we undertake some negotiations. So the city manager and city council support the city manager in undertaking negotiations with the provincial government to recover some of those financial costs. I wanted to echo the words that have been said about the importance of caring for workers who have suffered injury on the job. We are in a different era now where we recognize also that trauma is an injury, and mental health is crucial, and that's really it's important. And at the same time, the provincial government has made those changes to certification and training, also support that. The thing is that the complexity of that is increasing because of the increasingly technical and complex service that the Toronto Fire Service provides. You heard the chief talk about all of the different ways that Toronto's leading the country, and in fact is a global leader in terms of what we're able to do for emergency response. And this is crucial not just for Toronto Fire Service to show up, but also to support the other first responders in Toronto Paramedic Service and Toronto Police, and to train them to be able to enter and to be able to attend in very, very physically complex situations, and to provide the training facilities for that. So everything from a train derailment to a collapse, the trench that happened in my ward recently, saving lives is absolutely important. And then there's the question about how much Toronto Fire Service and all of the frontline response, and Toronto Paramedic Service are attending to very medically complex calls in a situation in which healthcare responses, including when it comes to overdose and the shift onto the street of drug use and into parks, and increasing overdoses, so that it's really important that we continue to understand all of the ways it's working. I want to recognize also the leadership of Toronto Fire Service and Chief Jessup in particular. It's been a real privilege working with Chief Jessup on the lithium ion battery issue. We were immediately called to hold, bring items to council, speak to the media. And I think that the leadership of this fire service and this chief has directly contributed to putting the urgency of response from the federal and provincial government on their agendas. And now we have a provincial process and we have a federal process. And I also want to recognize that Chief Jessup also does mentor and talk to fire chiefs in other cities. I'm aware of that because I've received some of those requests and passed them on. The recruitment piece that Councillor Shen mentioned, we're making progress there, and that's very important. I see Councillor Fletcher is here, and she was on this committee when that work was advanced. And finally, just to say the amount of work that Toronto Fire Service does to care for some of the most vulnerable people in the city, the collaboration with Toronto Community Crisis Service, with the Toronto Shelter Service supports, the encampment office in particular, and the good results that are being seen in terms of, for example, preventing fires, which is the best thing that we could do, and showing up and saving lives and protecting lives when it happens. And we have the item of 92 Lapin coming later that I've added to the agenda. And I just want to recognize as well that without the Toronto Fire Service collaboration with other city divisions, municipal licensing and standards, for example, we would not have been able to attend to that. And there was a real threat to life ongoing happening there. So with that, I just want to say thank you. And if there are any questions about my motion, I can entertain them now. So on the motion, all in favor? And thank you very much. Item is.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. And now we're going to go on to item number 2, and that is building local capacity to deliver childcare in high inequality neighborhoods update. And we have one speaker, Amy O'Neill. Amy O'Neill, welcome to committee. You have 5 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
And you have 5 minutes to speak. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please. You have 5 minutes to speak.
I'm having trouble. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay, great.
You have 5
Sorry
minutes
for
to
that.
speak. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, to the committee today. My name is Amy O'Neill, and I have served on the board of the Toronto Community for Better Childcare for the past 8 years, and I've worked in the childcare sector since the late 1990s. I'm currently the executive director of Treetop Children's Centre, which is a licensed not-for-profit childcare centre serving preschool, kindergarten, and school-aged children. I would like to begin by thanking Toronto Children's Services for listening and responding to the needs of the sector. Several recent announcements will make a meaningful difference for childcare operators, educators, children, and families. First, thank you very much for increasing the childcare support funding pot of money from $30,000 to $50,000 per center. Increased funding for children with special needs has been a long-standing priority in our community, and this investment is greatly appreciated. Secondly, thank you for providing funding for school-age programs. Since the introduction of CWELF, many school-age programs have struggled with lower enrollment because families are paying significantly higher fees. This is because CWELF does not cover school-age fees. This investment will help preserve these important programs. Third, thank you for simplifying the childcare fee subsidy process. Reducing barriers for families and encouraging school-age placements will help more children across the licensed childcare sector in Toronto. Our community welcomes these important initiatives. Now, I would just like to make 3 requests to Toronto Children's Services and Council. First, we need stable, predictable funding. Over the past 5 years, funding has changed from year to year with new funding envelopes, different reporting requirements, and separate reconciliations. While every investment is appreciated, managing short-term funding streams has become an administrative burden, especially for smaller nonprofit operators like myself. Stable, ongoing funding would allow us to plan, retain staff, and focus where the focus is needed on children rather than on paperwork. Secondly, we need to address the workforce crisis. The report notes that Toronto is on track to meet its provincial space creation targets. While that's encouraging, new spaces will require qualified educators, and currently Ontario is currently short nearly 10,000 registered early childhood educators. We urge the city to continue advocating to the province for a pay equity compliant provincial wage grid. Without competitive wages, we cannot recruit and retain the educators we need to expand the system. Finally, we need a more proactive approach to growth. The growth toolkit provided by Toronto Children's Services is a positive step, but expansion cannot depend solely on operators deciding to grow. We ask that the city partner with nonprofit operators to identify buildings and land that could become childcare centers, particularly in Scarborough and Etobicoke, and help fast-track approvals that delay projects. We also ask that TCS continue to advocate for stable multi-year funding. Last year's 4-month growth window demonstrated how difficult it is for nonprofit organizations to plan, renovate, or build new centers within such unrealistic timeframes. Sustainable capital funding is essential if we are serious about expanding licensed childcare. Toronto has demonstrated real leadership through the investments announced this year, and we sincerely thank you for that. Our hope is that the next step is creating a childcare system based on stable funding, a strong workforce, and a proactive plan for growth. The childcare community is ready to partner with the city to make that vision a reality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? No. Thank you for coming to committee. Are there any questions of staff? Visiting Councillor Ainsley goes first, and then we'll go to Councillor Candeville. Go ahead, Councillor Ainsley.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to ask staff, recently at Scarborough Community Council, there was a development application that involved swapping a piece of City of Toronto Parkland to make whole a development. And I'm trying to understand how children's services are involved. Because the developer, it's in a neighborhood, one of our neighborhood improvement areas, and the developer is agreeable to child care space within the building, but it's for profit, a Montessori style daycare that they're suggesting. And I'm trying to understand how children's services would be involved in an application like this if we need affordable childcare in the community. Thank you.
Sir, can we have that microphone turned up a bit? It's difficult to hear. Thank you.
Is that better?
That's better.
Perfect. By way of introduction, I just want to start off by saying good morning. My name is Sherry Kamali, and I am the manager for Toronto Children's Services. Thanks for the question. In terms of development applications, children's services that would be led by planning and development, and they would intersect with us at such phase that it's ready to move forward. So we wouldn't be involved initially in the discussion.
Okay, because I guess, and sorry, with the greatest amount of respect, at Scarborough Community Council the other day, we were told there wasn't any interaction in the application with children's services.
The chair, that's correct. We would be engaged at the point afterwards upon the planning review.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
And then the next question that I wanted to ask about was, my understanding was the city used to have a policy where it matched federal and provincial contributions up to 20%. And I was told that policy was no longer in place, and I was wondering why. Why not? Thank you.
Through the chair, I'm unsure of that direct policy. However, through the Canada-wide program, there has been significant investment in terms of the federal and provincial funding that is provided to us, which has significantly reduced the city's contribution. But I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, I will. Could you do some research and get back to me offline?
Yeah, I think that the arrangements between the province and the city and due to the Canada-wide investment would have changed a lot of things. So I think it's great if perhaps Children's Services can provide Councillor Ainsley a briefing note on that, on the changes to how childcare is funded. And thank you so much, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Candeville, and then Councillor Shan. Please go ahead, Councillor Candeville.
Thank you, Chair Bravo, and thank you to staff for working with our office since the motion from late fall last year, and of course with our engagement with Scarborough childcare providers a month or two ago in helping to address any barriers perceived and real. Much appreciated. As part of this report, beyond recognizing the structural and financial challenges, how does the strategy look to make progress in growth in areas like Scarborough and Etobicoke that have been identified as inequitable?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. The province, as you are aware, sets the legislative policy and funding framework. So this with this respect. However, the levers that are within our control, which include consultation and engagement, town halls, as we did in your ward, and building capacity and professional development are within our control, and developing a blueprint, which hopefully will provide better service navigation support to operators that are interested in expanding. And I will through our service plan to the province and federal governments for increased capital and operational funding to support growth and expansion.
Gotcha. And given that highlighted need for capital dollars, at this point, as we look into not just next year, but a mid or long-term capital project, is there consideration to seek more capital dollars internally?
We have a 10-year capital plan that is fully committed, and so we do not have any unallocated funds. However, we're hopeful that through negotiations between the federal and provincial government for the Canada-wide renewal, that there will be capital funding associated with that.
And that 10-year capital plan, to what extent will that address the geographic inequity of childcare accessibility?
Through the chair, we do have high inequity projects that are, there's 64 currently planned projects in our capital plan, and there are definitely areas that are high priority. And as new applications come forward, I want to note that we do have our directed growth plan that was included in our service plan, and that is a framework that we do use to prioritize expansion in high inequity neighborhoods.
Thank you. Part of the report looks at home childcare as a strategy to address inequity. How are we looking to incentivize or use that strategy to make up the delta or that inequity?
Thank you, the chair. Thanks for the question. Home childcare is a viable, licensed home childcare is a viable option, and we have seen a growth couple years in home childcare as Canada-wide has brought affordability to the system, which has resulted in wait lists for licensed group childcare going up. So home childcare has been a viable option, and we continue agencies to expand in that area.
Exactly. I know, I much appreciate it. And what is there a specific plan to use that strategy to make up the missing ground? Like, for example, in my ward or other wards that have that disparity, is there a specific plan to heighten or grow that solution, licensed home childcare?
To the chair, we do embed growth into our regular planning and discussions. There isn't per se a strategy for home childcare. However, we do embed it into our local system planning.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Do you think there's opportunity to have a targeted approach to increase, whether it's through expedition of applications, whether it's SPA or planning, zoning? could that strategy be, if fully fleshed out, provide tangible relief?
To the chair, thanks for the question. Absolutely. We have targeted engagements through our home childcare team that we do have and our home visitors. There's much more that we can do to increase capacity in the same way that we have with licensed group childcare in terms of capacity building, information sharing, town halls, roundtable events. So we can increase our strategies to promote home childcare within Toronto.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shan, questions?
Thank you, Chair Bro. Thanks, Councillor Candewell, for asking some of the questions I wanted to ask as well. I'm just trying to see first maybe a question about the map that I'm seeing around high need areas, or when was the last time, when did we have this data, and how long have we known these things around the needs in certain areas?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. The latest data was put together last year with the release of our service plan. Okay.
When was the last time previously that we had data, and has it changed much, or is Scarborough continues to be an area with, I'm looking at the number of wards, and 5 out of 6 wards are in the high.
To the chair, I don't think there has been a lot of change, but I can look into the last time the data was refreshed outside of last year. Scarborough had a high inequity ward.
Yeah, so my question, I guess, is along the same line. When I was a councillor in 2017, 2018, we had similar needs in Scarborough. Or if things have improved, definitely things have improved a little bit more with additional support, both from the other levels as well, particularly federal level. But I have concern that, is there a possibility of a much more targeted strategy? My ward is, and so is most of all, probably all the wards, and some wards are even much bigger than the size of municipalities. I border Pickering, and Pickering is less population than my ward. And to be able to have a much more localized strategy, whether it be even like similar to how we attract businesses, can we do more to attract childcare providers to locate with incentives that are targeted to certain areas, that are maybe allowing communities to come together to put a collaborative application? Are we trying anything different like that in addition to, I guess the targeted outreach is fine, but in addition to outreach, is there anything else specifically being done for certain areas?
Sure, thanks for the question. And as outlined in the report, over the last couple of years, we've undertaken a number of different engagement opportunities, targeted outreach in high inequity neighborhoods to increase the capacity, identify what those barriers are. We also have staff dedicated internally that provide that service navigation support to operators to help uncover some of those barriers and step in. And we will continue to undertake those initiatives. We've had several roundtable events too, from different councillors to do more targeted outreach supports, and we can continue to expand on those areas.
I guess, thank you for that answer. I guess the broader question around engagement, targeted outreach, roundtables, those are great steps at an earlier stage of identifying a needed area with high need. But having known that these areas have had high need for a while, and we've continued to look at engagement and roundtables and so on, I'm just looking at a bit more of a specificity, like we have in addressing some of the other equities, as to saying if there is a way for us to have some concrete proposals that will address the inequity. Because if we do know what the challenges are, which I'm assuming we know by now, what are some concrete steps that are being taken to address those challenges, in addition to the engagement?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. We are aware of the challenges. I just want to note that a number of these challenges are outside of the direct control of the city. They have to do with capital funding, land space zoning restrictions, complex multi-step licensing process. However, we are open to working with wards in high inequity neighborhoods to increase that capacity building. We also continue to advocate to the provincial and federal governments for increased funding to support growth and expansion. But we are definitely open to working on different strategies to support awareness and growth.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Carol, questions
Thanks.
of staff.
Yeah, I want to go back to what the growth plan is. Without the province coming with their contractual obligation to provide the capital funds for the capital spaces, that's very much part of their deal with the federal government. Without them there, I just want to be clear, because people are asking you to define it. While you want to write a positive report, at the moment, the growth plan is largely an engagement exercise, is it not? We're engaging so that if we had the funds, we would know where to move first. If we had the funds, we've already engaged to try and find those entities that could become operators. It's largely a plan to make us ready to move. In terms of what small amount is in our 10-year plan now, that's all committed, which means we have to consider it already spent. And beyond that, it's preparedness at this point until the province comes to the table. Am I right?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. I also just want to note that we do leverage other tools, such as school-based capital projects. In Toronto, 60% of licensed childcare spaces are located in schools. Right. So we do leverage other opportunities as they arise as well.
And there is some language in the report that looks at, over time increasing the number in the program, but some of that is increasing the number of people who have opted in. It's not, technically it's a space that existed, but it is now opted in to become part of our numbers and part of the $10 a day system. Am I right about that?
That is correct.
Okay. I want to be clear about that, because I think there's a tendency to want to be positive in the report, but we also have to be real about it. I was really interested, though, while it's small, it's compelling that you are working to license and bring in more home daycare situations. Are we unique in bringing in those operators, or is that something that is easier to support and bring in under the whole provincial agreement?
Through the chair, that is not unique. It's always, licensed home childcare has always been around. However, through the implementation of the Canada-wide program, it has increasingly been an option for families given the high wait lists and given the small group sizes, the specific cultural centeredness of the programs, and also the community-based aspects of the program.
Right. So we're spending most of our time on licensing home childcares that already exist, or do we actually have education programs to say, are you thinking about this? Because if you are, let us help you and make sure you have the capacity to be a licensee. Are we looking for new entities in that area?
Through the chair, yes, we are. And we currently are undertaking with our team a campaign to outreach to get more operators to join the system.
Okay. And last question, and this is the negative one. So we have a fully committed capital plan. We also have, there's a limit to the operating dollars available. If a councillor comes to you today and says, I have a developer offering me a childcare space on a platter, can we add that? Or do we not have the capital and operating capacity beyond what's already committed right now?
Through the chair, in discussions with financial planning, we do not have additional capital dollars at this point in time to expand. If such opportunities do arise through planning and development, we will have discussions, and we'd have to engage with financial planning and then also seek council endorsement to move forward.
Right. But the operating, if the capital facility, if all of that could be worked out, are the operating dollars available there, or you would have to put them into a next budget year?
The operating dollars through Canada-wide would be available.
They would be available. Okay, great.
I've got it.
That's something at least. Okay, thank you. Those
And that's fine too.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of staff to speak? Councillor Carroll to speak.
Yeah, just briefly, I did want to frame that because we want to be positive about the situation we're in, and so it's a very positively forward-looking framing to this update, but it's I think a matter of really reading between the lines. We are basically excellently prepared should the capital end of this agreement start. We've gone out to look for the operators. We know where we need to go. We've spoken to those communities. That's where we would move. And while mine would not be one of those communities, I certainly wouldn't argue with it that we do need to go to those spaces. But we are waiting for a province to live up to its capital end of the Quelk agreement. And I certainly hope it happens sooner rather than later. Those are my comments. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other speakers? I'll just add that I completely concur with Councillor Carroll. The Children's Services has a strategic plan that sets out a lot of the objectives that have been raised by councillors, and also the operational plan that followed that strategic plan. It had the benefit also of having been in deep relationship with and alongside the Child Care Roundtable, which I chair, and which meets annually and convenes the entire sector, every operators, parents, training institutions, colleges, and its operators on both on the range of offerings. And I think it's also important to note that the staff are ready to ensure that home-based expansion actually serves communities where there aren't any other also opportunities. There isn't new development happening necessarily. There aren't new concentrating in a child care center, a large child care center is not an option. And finally, what the deputy talked about in terms of the advocacy and to be very clear on the needs of this sector. This is something that the Child Care Roundtable has done in unison with City Council and also staff in terms of being very clear that we need to have workforce stabilization, that the quality is the care and the care are the workers. So in addition to having the capital facilities, we need to have high quality childcare. And the City of Toronto is committed to ensuring that nonprofit childcare continues to grow as well. So thank you for that. On the item, all in favor?
Chair,
Chair,
I think you missed.
I asked if there was more speakers, and I didn't see your little hands, both of you. So I think I will go to Councillor Candeville and then Councillor Shen. Please go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I want to echo the comments made by colleagues. Councillor Carroll, in relation to the need for the federal and provincial government to step to the plate for the capital dollars we need to expand in a wholehearted and meaningful way. And simultaneously, the work staff have done, again, appreciation for the roundtable we held in my ward 2 months back to bring in both private and publicly funded operators together to look at opportunities for growth is appreciated. The commitment to reducing barriers, creating engagement, and looking at ways to create opportunity is appreciated, and looking forward to continuing that engagement to grow opportunity, lessen barriers. Simultaneously, the work behind growing licensed home care providers is deeply appreciated. I think there's room for growth in how we connect and intersect planning and childcare to address those opportunities and lessen barriers, whether they're cost and particularly time, to grow home care, providing options, licensed, of course, as perhaps the next step as we continue our engagement and advocacy for the capital dollars. So looking forward to the work in that capacity. It is difficult, contentious around particular neighborhoods and how that looks like, but I think that's a viable space given that the need is now and the need is acute. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Seeing none on the item, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We will move on to item number 3, status update, implementation of Ombudsman Toronto's recommendations on the city's handling of a resident social assistant overpayments. And we have a speaker, Arnold Margulis. Welcome to committee, sir. Arnold Margulis, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is a kind of important topic for people who are living on very limited income, including people living in RGI subsidized buildings in Toronto community housing and Toronto seniors housing. I'm living in a Toronto seniors housing, and I'm a pretty active tenant. And I can tell you that about 20 to 30, possibly a large number of tenants, they are, of course, elderly people, and they come to Canada, you know, in age where they can hardly contribute to the society or to work actively. And they also, you know, have language limitations. They have almost no knowledge about, you know, Canadian law and the different various departments involved in regulating life in Canada. So as a result, most of those people receive initially, because it's 59 years old is the threshold for being placed in Toronto seniors housing. Many of those people initially receive either TESS, you know, social assistance, or ODSP pension until they are allowed or entitled to receive all the security benefits. But in quite often, what happens, you know, all the security has several components of benefits, and due to lack of documentation, due to you know, complex history behind these people, they are not immediately assigned all the or any amount of all the security benefit, and you know, they continue to receive either social assistance or pension or DSP. So, and what happens when eventually they receive, you know, during this period, they of course supported by ODSP. And when they eventually approved all the security benefits, it can take up to a year. So what TESS does or ODSP does, they try, you know, they create overpayment. And, you know, this is a good idea to follow the overpayment process, how to recover it. But I'm just trying to say that, you know, you have to be very careful who you are recovering it from, and at what amount, and at what rate, because and whether you need to recover it from elderly, vulnerable tenants to begin with, because what happens, you know, ODSP beneficiaries, they receive now about $1,500 a month, and they pay rent at the rate, RGI rent at the amount of about let's say $115 a month. So this is a small amount. But when they become eligible for old age security, they receive benefits about $1,800 a month, which is close to ODSP value. But suddenly they have to pay, you know, about like $650 a month for RGI unit, the same small unit. And also, quite often they are calculated back for the entire year. If it was delayed, the approval of the pension, they are calculated back. You know, they have to repay the difference between, you know, the unit rent for the ODSP and all the security, you know, beneficiaries, which is a tremendous amount, given the fact that the actual payments are very close for ODSP and old age security. So despite this, when TS or ODSP, they try to, to recover there's overpayments, they actually leave people without the ability to receive, tax refund for the GST or like the groceries tax refund and similar support. And, with such growth of like food banks and basically the pension is so small, it doesn't really allow you to live normal life right now. It doesn't allow to buy groceries. The prices are going up and up. It doesn't allow to, to consume reasonable services, including even the, the communication services with relatives. So under those circumstances, when the rent difference is so high on the RGI between ODSP and old age security beneficiaries, it is unreasonable. And especially when they have to pay back the rent, difference for the period of up to 1 year, for the period when the old age security was calculated and approved for different, for different components. So it is unreasonable for the TS or ODSP to start, make it a priority to recover the overpayments in such cases, because there is nothing. Yeah, because there is nothing to recover here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time, sir. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, we now go on to questions of staff. Are there any questions of staff? Seeing no questions, I will just speak briefly to say that the report you have before you is excellent work on working with the Ombudsman's office by Toronto Employment Services, and it is been characterized as a bit of a map for how to proceed in working with the Ombudsman's office after an investigation. So I want to thank the division, and I'd like to move the item. All those in favor? Oppose? That's carried. Thank you. We're going to go on to the next item, which is EC 30.4 Lower Don Parkland Indigenous Naming Progress Update. I was holding it on behalf of Councillor Fletcher, but she has had everything dealt with, and so we're releasing that hold, and I'd like to move the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're going to move on to EC 30.6, follow-up on 2026 EC 27.1, refining the definition of an entertainment establishment nightclub in Toronto Municipal Code Chapter 545, licensing. And we have a speaker. We have two speakers, actually. The first speaker is Harris Rosen. Online? Oh, welcome, yes. Welcome to committee, sir. You have 5 minutes.
So, the rationale is face disproportionate financial and regulatory burden due to licensing measures. The idea that making metal detectors optional for small capacity licensees improves outcomes is irrational and dangerously flawed. Now is not the time to make metal detectors optional for venues with capacities of 151 or less after 12 shootings in 48 hours driven by illegal firearms. The threat is immediate, and activity, not square footage, drives risk. The city is presenting a regulatory way out that gives operators a false sense of security while providing none. That is unacceptable. This gap was drafted alongside municipal licensing and standards and carries the blessing of legal services that makes it the smoking gun, not a solution. Between the lines, it reads like a way to loosen licensing enforcement and generate revenue without actually funding safety. A voluntary, loophole-ridden approach will produce uneven enforcement, leave patrons and nearby residents exposed, and push people to avoid nightlife events, harming licensees and the city's cultural economy. This is EDC's covert attempt to kill Toronto nightlife. Screening is necessary, it must be mandatory, consistently enforced, and paired with city-funded support for small operators, so public safety doesn't become an unfunded burden on the very businesses we need to protect. Anything less is a dangerous abdication of responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, we'll go on to the next speaker. I've got John Norman. Welcome to committee, John Norman. Mr. Norman. John Norman. Oh, yeah. Okay, so you're welcome to committee. You have 5 minutes to speak. Oh, yes, I realize I should be louder. Just make sure you press the button is green.
Be green.
Yes, and please direct the microphone to yourself. Right there.
Thank you. Yeah, this is very simple, actually. It's just about, I don't know how much you look at this stuff, but it's to do with the fire. This weekend, you probably saw in the news, there was the fire that happened in Thailand. I don't know if anybody saw that. It was horrendous. There was also, about 20 years ago, a fire in Sweden. The fire brigade got there in 15 seconds, but after something like 13 seconds, the people inside were dead. I've just written out something that I'd like to consider in licensing that should apply anyway. So forgive me for it's a bit long, but you can take the essence of it. Licensing shall only be allowed if the following exists. There shall be fire exits that shall never be locked from the inside. When any personnel of the establishment or any of the premises or any person, public or private, shall be in the building or club or entertainment or facility or similar. The fire exit shall exit into an open area that shall guarantee any person using the fire exit shall be have the full ability to move their body to an unenclosed area which shall have no door or any barrier, so that the person shall be able to remove themselves to any infinite distance unenclosed area where they shall not be in any danger. They shall not be in any danger from a fire in the club or bar or facility or any entertainment facility. There shall be no dead ends with no exit, i.e. trapped in a bathroom, restroom, or other sub-area at the end of a corridor where there's no exit. And there should be, for breaking this, a punishment would be a minimum of jail sentence. That's just my thoughts on this, so I'd just like to consider that, and if you can put that, something that's a bit long-winded, but you see the essence of what I'm trying to get at, that we don't end up with another thing like we had this weekend. And this is something that clubs seem to get away with all the time by locking exits at the back so people can't come in without paying. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Thank you, sir. You
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
Questions of, I have a couple of questions of staff. You have questions of staff? So I want to clarify for in light of what we've heard from members of the public, that this is a very narrow, can you confirm that this is a very narrow set of what are essentially bars? But they were needing some refinement in terms of how we classify them. How many are there?
Through you, Speaker, we're anticipating, or we know of 3 that would at the moment fit into this new category. And it is a recognition through review of the bylaw that the risk that exists with this kind of activity is dependent to some extent on how many people are in the establishment. So if you have establishments that by definition of occupancy cannot hold more than 150 people, for example,
the risk would be lower in a place like that, than a place, for example, that would be able to hold 1,000 people. And in recognition of the lower risk, there are also reflections in the licensing requirement to lower the regulatory burdens on those establishments.
Right, so we're talking about small scale, not large scale nightclubs that the people may be thinking of, small scale convenings in which there's some form of fun happening. And can you speak to the fire safety requirements that would apply?
I see the fire chief coming up.
Chief Jessup is here, and he heard the deputation from the gentleman. And I hope you can hear us. Okay, great. Go.
Through the chair. Chair, regardless of any bylaws passed by the municipality, the Ontario Fire Code still would supersede and is the ultimate authority with respect to fire safety in any establishment in the City of Toronto. So as noted during the presentation, we are constantly out. We are conducting inspections. And in fact, over the summer, we reconstituted the Entertainment Task Force, which goes out with AGCO, other city divisions, and Toronto Police. So from my perspective, the fire code would still supersede anything, and we would enforce it as required.
And that is part of the licensing regime. And so thank you. Are there any other, I see there's questions from Councillor Moyes and also from Councillor Carroll. Go ahead, Councillor Moyes.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. You know, based on reading this, I think there's 4 nightclubs that are impacted by this. But I'm still not clear, though, what is the reasoning for fire capacity between, like, what determines, like, 150 versus 250 versus 300? I know I rented a venue a couple of years ago, and they were saying that, well, if you have tables and chairs, it's X capacity. But if it's no tables and chairs, then it's X capacity. Like, you know, again, it really just change what people can and cannot do. And again, the general public is confused by this. So is that just an arbitrary decision, or is that something that, you know, bylaw enforcement or the fire service does? I mean, again, I recognize what happened in Thailand this past week, which is quite horrible, but we also know that, listening to that, I know that exits were locked, right? But that's different than what we do here in Toronto, Ontario.
So, Chair, so first question, Chair, is the occupancy is set by regulation based on numerous factors, Chair. So as the councillor noted, tables and chairs change the occupancy, serving alcohol changes the occupancy, whether chairs are tied together. So for example, if you're at Rogers Centre and the chairs are tied together in the aisles, that changes the occupancy. So there are at least a dozen factors in the Ontario Fire Code with respect to occupancy numbers that vary based on the type of occupancy, but also what happens inside, dining, tables and chairs, alcohol serving, that kind of thing. So that is set by regulation. Secondly, Councillor, we've heard Thailand a number of times. What I want to put on the record is their fire regulations are completely different than what is set in the province of Ontario. We have some of the strictest fire regulations, candidly, in the world, which is why we very seldom see those types of incidents that we, tragically saw this week.
Thank you. Any Councillor Carroll, questions of staff?
Yeah, just a quick, I'm sort of simplifying what's in the report, but for when we're in council, and this generally happens to wards that are nothing like my own, but when we have the applications for liquor licenses, the past practice of being dishonest, going for a license for a strictly eating establishment that needs a liquor license and will serve food, versus this subclass, entertainment, place of assembly, eating or drinking. It's sort of a subset. It's neither a nightclub nor a straight restaurant. how do we incentivize people to make sure they're being honest about the fact that they are going to have live musicians? 100 people will be listening to the musicians. Or how do we incentivize them to apply for the right license?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Part of the incentive is also enforcement, right? Well, I think through inspections, through enforcement, through ensuring that when a business operates, whether it is enforcement through MLS or enforcement through Toronto Fire, it is that when they are telling the city that they are going to operate in a certain capacity, that they in fact operate that way, and if they don't, there are mechanisms to bring them into compliance.
And I think there's the problem that we hear again and again from our colleagues in the downtown core. What you just finished with, bring them into compliance, which means, do we continue to have the pathway where they apply to be a restaurant, then you come and find that, oops, no, you're having live music, there's 100 people listening now and maybe even dancing. Bring them into compliance means upgrade their license, does it not?
It can. There are lots of tools that we could use, depending on if it, for example, there's an increased risk in a particular way that a licensee is operating. There are also ways for us to bring that licensee to the TLT in order to put some conditions on their license.
Okay, so conditions can be applied because they use that pathway. And if someone is applying for just a restaurant, just an eating establishment, but the size of it is such that there's the potential to become, a music venue, even of this small size. So are you looking, in inspecting for the purpose of issuing a license, are you also looking for, the fire conditions, et cetera, so that if this restaurant is going to transition, you're seeing the potential to be able to comply with those rules? Is it sort of a dual examination of the facility?
Through you, Chair, it is, and I will say this isn't new for our enforcement of these kinds of businesses. I think that the assumption and the optimistic hope is that most businesses want to operate within regulation, and they just want to operate their businesses and provide their services. But there are some businesses that do try to sort of live in sort of a gray area, and I think that's where our enforcement and inspections and ensuring that their applications are proper, that's where we have to do our part.
Okay, perfect.
Are there any other speakers to this? No, I'm sorry, sir, that we're in committee now. So I just want to speak briefly to the item to say that this is existing while larger review progresses of the changing environment in which there are offerings in the city and different kinds of establishments that offer entertainment opportunities. Not everything needs to be a nightclub, though we appreciate them. And this really amends the definition of entertainment establishing nightclub license category to be space with an occupancy of 150 people or more. If you have a small venue, a bookstore, for example, where there's people having some drinks and then having some guitar music playing, or a bar that has a small live performance, these are good uses, and we need to make sure that they can exist in compliance with our licensing. And I would say that being in in the communities that some of us live in, it's a really great scale to be able to connect, to come out, and it's a really important way to support working musicians in the city, to be able to perform, to be known, and I think that that's something we need to encourage, because it's a part of a lot of the policies that we've set out for ourselves in the city. People coming out, not being at home, getting off screen. This is like analog experiences, and with very few risks, as you heard from the fire chief. It's all covered by very strict rules, and this is a licensing category perhaps only covers 3 establishments right now, but will be allowed to grow. And finally, I'd just say some of these venues have been operating without incident for many, many years and really contributing to the rich fabric of neighborhoods. This is a situation in which I can leave my house, walk over to a place, listen to some very cool live music, a performance, have a beer, head home, and I've had a much richer life as a result. That's all I had to say. I'm not sure if anyone else, Deputy Mayor Malik, to speak.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to begin by thanking staff for the report, and to the Chair, Councillor Bravo, who has worked hard on this issue and on the venues to make this change. We have been a part of the Night Economy Review, which has been a very important piece of work, especially for my neighborhoods and my communities in the downtown. It has been a part of uplifting the economic recovery of our entertainment district, the parts of the city that are such an important destination, and local spots as well. Places where we can showcase, talent in our neighborhoods, where we can make sure that there is a place to go and kind of enjoy the best of the city, and to be able to support our local businesses. And this has to happen alongside protecting our residents and the patrons who live near or are regulars at many of these businesses. And so what we have in front of us is a really important step to fix some of the issues that have been caught. A couple of these businesses are in my ward, and so looking very closely at what they are grappling with and how we do find that right measure. I won't even say balance, it is holding these things in the right measure to ensure safety, security, and reliability, and also the viability and enjoyment of a healthy kind of mix of activities and experiences in our city, especially in our downtown. And what we have in front of us does find a way to be able to hold these in the right measure to align the nightclub definition with both Ontario's fire code safety threshold and other jurisdictions. It means that our small venues are able to operate in a way that is compliant and without undue hardships in terms of the hoops that they need to jump through. I want to thank staff for bringing this forward, and we'll continue to make sure that our night economy is, refined, is being responsive to what we're seeing, both from residents and from business owners and operators, so that they can thrive in our city. And I also know that Chapter 545 is also inviting some other examinations and looking at some of the other ways that we can continue to refine and strengthen it. And I appreciate the work that staff is doing with local businesses in my ward, and also with our local BIA, the Toronto Downtown West BIA, and others.
Thank you. Ditto. I think on the item, all those in favor, opposed, that is carried. We are going to now go to release EC 30.11, Théâtre, français de Toronto. Are there any questions of staff or speakers on this item? No. So on the item, yes. My sincerest apologies. That's the one I had to release first. Councillor Fletcher is prolific at this meeting. Improving the usability of Old City Hall as filming location. Are there any questions of staff or speakers on this? Seeing none, on the item, all in favor, opposed, that's carried. Thank you for assist from Councillor Moise on that one. So going back to 11, Théâtre français de Toronto, questions or speakers? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, that's carried. Excellent news there. And now we are at EC 30.12, review of Nightlife hub model. And I see Councillor Ainsley is here. Do you have questions of staff, Councillor Ainsley?
No, I don't, Madam Chair.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, of course. Mr. Norman, you're registered to speak on this item as well. Would you like to speak again? Okay, please. Well, please make sure that the green light is on, and you have 5 minutes.
It's on now, yes. Okay. I live in the gay village area, and they've just put the traffic, control there. It's a nightmare when they have gay pride. I'm not against gay pride, but there's no control when it gets late at night. There's two other reasons actually. I have problem. I don't drink, but I don't mind if people drink. But there's a couple of problems I see. Is alcohol is having a horrendous effect on society in a way that people don't understand. With Alcoholics Anonymous, I've been going to that because I've started studying that. And the destruction in families through AA and Al-Anon is unbelievable. I'm almost to the point where I think we should actually ban alcohol, because I've seen so many families in the sort of 2 years I've been studying this been totally destroyed in it. And it's really horrendous. There's also another problem that I see, and this has come out of this, but also partly to do with my studies in society and that sort of thing. You get a husband that goes out drinking, he comes home and abuses his wife. This is something people don't look at, the abuse of women through alcohol. And on that alone, I think we shouldn't extend it. It needs to be curtailed in a way that women aren't, vulnerable to the abuse of a husband that goes drinking. And there's been so many of these cases. I think this committee should look not from the economic component of it, but from a holistic human component. And if we can do that, we might end up with something whereby people can go out and socialize. But the other thing that you've got Montreal here, people might quote other places in Europe, but the mentality of people in Europe with drinking and bars is totally different to North Americans. I was blitzed when I came here. I was blown away, rather, when I came here and found out how many people drink. They just go and get blitzed. It's mind-boggling. It didn't click with me at all, because people don't do that in the UK. They go and drink, they don't get drunk like that. So please consider the things that I'm saying about women's safety, and this should be paramount in everybody's mind, the safety of women, the abuse they go through, and also the destruction of families with too much alcohol. So will you please, maybe if you would like to do some research on it and come back from a holistic point of view and a safety point of view before you pass and vote on this as a finite argument. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for coming to committee. You might be rewarded to know that abstinence is growing among 18 to 34-year-olds, actually, at a very significant rate. It's really impacting the bottom line for some alcohol producers. Thank you for coming, and now we have questions of staff. Councillor, you don't have any questions, correct?
I'm sorry, yeah, I just wanted to ask staff, so the model that, one of the models is in Montreal, which has night hubs, and they're centered around special events. My understanding is that they're not just about bars and restaurants and nightclubs. It includes within these hubs cultural establishments such as museums, art galleries. This isn't all about drinking in the downtown core of Montreal. And I also understand that the hub model is looking at right across the city, not just in the downtown of any particular city that it operates in. Is that my understanding?
Chair, that's largely what Montreal is doing. Actually, Nightclub action plan, and it looked at where there were frequent disruptions. Salary, the village, businesses forward in and petition the city to introduce which as a right the extended hours
upon the businesses meeting a certain number of conditions about crowd control, nuisance, etc. They are all clustered closely together in the downtown of Montreal, and to my knowledge, I don't know of a plan to expand them outside of those sites, but I'm sure they'll be evaluating the program as it moves forward.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have some questions. So we have considered night economy, nightlife quite significantly in this committee and this term. Is it accurate that we have spent some time talking about how to incentivize or enable through a number of different means the existence of nightlife, which, you know, in some of our wards that means 4 in the morning, in some wards it means being able to eat after a restaurant after 7 p.m. But to get to those places where there isn't a robust evening, let's just say, and vibrant life outside of in the inner suburbs and areas that have less density, is that correct?
That is correct. To you, Chair. There have been efforts by this council to try to avoid the tight clustering of entertainment venues in certain downtown areas.
In terms of the Montreal experience, it's significantly tied, I think, the Quartier Spectacle, Saint-Laurent, et cetera, to tourist season. So it's not, you know, there is a particular kind of attendance there, but there is also robust kind of, if you go to Hochelaga, Maisonneuve, for example, you can also have a lot. It's far from the downtown. It's quite a long metro ride, but you can still go and have nightlife experiences there with smaller venues. And so it's a bit different than the Toronto experience in that way. Is that correct?
That is correct. As with let's call it small scale commercial in residential settings, there is sort of a fine-grained introduction of commercial activities in residential areas in Montreal, a bit different than what we have in Toronto.
Right, so we have, if we are going to concentrate our energies, if we are going to continue with council direction to create opportunities that are not so clustered, and I think a couple of the words that are here, Toronto Centre, but certainly, and Spadina, Fort York, where Councillor Moyse and Deputy Mayor Malik are councillors, a little bit Davenport, a little bit more Davenport, as well as Parkdale High Park. We, how would this correspond, and has there been thinking previously around whether this is something that we actually need to create in terms of, have we had a chance to study this at all?
To you as chair, we're always happy to look at best practice in other jurisdictions, and certainly Montreal has a global reputation as a nightlife center. We've not had the opportunity to study what is effectively quite a new initiative for the city of Montreal. We have a team ready to do so, but it would be premature to declare whether or not it offered real lessons for Toronto to change its zoning.
And they don't have the data yet either necessarily to provide us. Okay, so on the extension of liquor license service hours, I mean, certainly we have a lot of requests to extend service and to beyond the regular time, and we have a lot of special occasion permit requests, but this is landing in an environment in which the provincial government is making significant changes to alcohol use rules. For example, at recent festivals, you can see, or just walking around the street, you can buy alcohol at a corner store. So alcohol use is actually pretty common everywhere now. And have we had a chance to kind of look into how all of these different provincial regulatory changes are interacting with our own licensing work?
To the chair, I'll start the response and then turn to my colleagues in municipal licensing and standard. But no, you've cited a number of the very, very recent changes that the province has introduced. Bring your own, the as a right extended hours associated with the World Cup hosting effort. tailgating. So it's really a bit of a policy field in evolution right now. And these are all quite recent, and I don't think we have yet had the opportunity to evaluate what has been the public response and any of the sort of spillover effects of these policy changes, but I'll defer to my colleagues with municipal licensing and standard.
And for my time, I'll sneak in one last question. Has there been any kind of consultation so far, or reaching out to the councillors in the areas with the most concentration of existing venues and to understand what the realities on the ground are? Go ahead. My previous question.
Sorry, and I appreciate my colleagues including us, but unfortunately, we don't have much to add to
Great. And on the question of like, have you had there hasn't been a way for the councillors most impacted here, particularly I think in Spadina, Fort York, and Toronto Centre, who have the highest concentration of these venues, to be able to, provide some insight at University, Rosedale, all the ones that I cited.
To you, Chair, that's correct. In fact, we embarked on those type of consultations related to staff work on temporary liquor licensing, the special occasion permits and other measures you've already mentioned. But given the provincial changes that came during the course of that work, we've paused that work, and so we will need to return to particularly those councillors with the highest amount of this activity.
Thank you. Questions of staff, Councillor Moyes.
Just one or two quick questions. So one of the things I struggle with since being a councillor is MLS and enforcement. And the question I have is MLS 24 hours or is it until a certain time? Because again, looking at this here, saying that to operate until 6 a.m., what time does MLS end their service? Thank you for the question, through your chair. And this is a question that we have been asked before, and we've answered it before as well. MLS is not a 24-hour response division. We are not staffed. We're not built up, and we're not designed to be a 24-hour operation. We are also not emergency responders, and we are not able, given our structure, our resources, our entire foundation, to be able to respond to complaints as they come in. So we do prioritize, and we have a priority model that we follow when we respond to service requests. To answer more directly, our noise officers, for example, will work until 2 a.m. But what I will also add is that where there are repeat issues, and we can identify that they are repeat issues, we can move resources to address them. And that's why we're happy to work with this committee and with councillors directly to identify those areas where our enforcement staff can assist. And if we do have to move resources or have people work different hours in order to address the issue, we will do that. But to be clear, who enforces the Liquor License Act in the City of Toronto? Through you, Chair, that would be the AGCO.
That's the Alcohol and Gaming Commission.
All right, okay, thank you.
Okay, so to speak, Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the recommendations are before us in the documentation that I provided. We've heard answers from staff that there's still a lot of work to be done, work that needs to be taken up again. I'm not asking for the implementation of these hubs. I'm asking for a report back on the dynamic of these hubs and how they could possibly work within the City of Toronto in conjunction with work that we've already done in around the night economy in the City of Toronto, and I'm asking for the committee's support for the report back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. To speak, I have,
Speak. Yeah, I'll just say briefly.
Yeah, Councillor Moyes to speak, and I have a motion.
Yeah, I just want to say that during Pride and also even during FIFA, Toronto Police have said to me that, you know, we extended the bars to open until 4, and they said to me that they would need their officers to be available during that time. And because they've been so stressed and overworked, you know, they really tried to discourage me from actually allowing the bars to open until 4 a.m. So there's a cost attached to this as well, you know, and I think, you know, we have to be realistic as to our capacity and how it impacts other divisions. So I would appreciate more information on this before even proceeding.
Thank you. I have a motion, so I think we'll get it up now. I think we heard, we heard from staff that there's always a willingness to look at other jurisdictions. This motion refers this item and this request for report back to Economic Development and Culture, Municipal Licensing and Standards together, because right now they're doing specific work on and are planning to bring back reports that relate to temporary liquor licensing and the business license and permit applications action plan. And in addition, we need to understand much better what the provincial changes, what impact they're having. And this report back then would benefit from Councillor Ainsley's request to consider the data coming out of Montreal. Because in addition to looking at the model, we need to understand how it's being, whether it's producing the outcomes that we hope for and that they're aligned with objectives of the City of Toronto. And I think one of the main ones is that we've specifically set out to ensure that entertainment and nightlife isn't clustered in a handful of wards, but that is actually accessible to residents all over the city at 25 wards. And some of them have been quite deprived of these opportunities. So that's my amendment, and I'd like to, are there any questions of the mover? No? To speak, Deputy Mayor Malik.
Thank you very much, and really appreciate the chair's motion, and I will be supporting it. As we know, and the work of this committee has been quite involved and extensive when it comes to exploring all the various aspects of how we approach the night economy in Toronto, particularly for downtown communities and in a ward like mine that has literally thousands of establishments that we are always, again, holding in the right measure, their viability, their success, the enjoyment, the experience of it, safety, alongside being good neighbors in our communities. And I support this going back to staff, because what I see in front of us is a bit puzzling, just in terms of the extensive work that we have done on the night economy, and then looking at this Montreal example, where I believe a lot of that work that we have done on the night economy has a lot to actually respond to what the model is that is being proposed there, and that it will always take some time to see how that model actually plays out, to be able to understand how other jurisdictions are approaching this and what they're seeing in terms of data and their measures of success before we barrel ahead and kind of make changes that we have already kind of made very thoughtfully through this process. So appreciate the work to refer this to staff to take a closer look. We should always be scanning to see what else is out there when it comes to managing and supporting our night economy in the best and safest way possible. And this, I think, it needs to be included in that list. The final thing that I will say is that because so much of what governs our night economy and some of the rules and the conditions around that are provincially mandated, we also have to be very real about the relationship between municipalities and the provinces that differ right across the country, including between us and a city like Montreal. And I appreciate the approach that allows staff to take a much closer look at that and to make sure that we can take from this what can, be a part of our Made in Toronto approach to the viability and the success of our night economy in our neighborhoods.
Thank you. Any other speakers on the item, on the motion? What's getting displayed? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item as amended. Oh, that's just the item. Thank you. So since we have Councillor Ainsley here, it's also for the next one, and we're going to do that, and then I'll have to reopen item number 8. I forgot to move a motion. So EC 30.13, basketball nets at City of Toronto parks and city-owned and operated facilities. This is a letter from Councillor Ainsley about fixing basketball courts so they have nets and sitting out regular inspections. And are there any questions of staff? Councillor Ainsley?
No, no questions.
I do have, I have a couple of questions for Parks and Recreation. Does Toronto have nets on outdoor courts right now?
Outdoor courts?
Can you just a little bit closer? Yeah.
Sure. Better? Perfect. We have rims, not nets, consistent with many other municipalities and school boards.
And why is that?
Because of the level of vandalism and damage, wear and tear that we see on outdoor nets. It carries a significant cost, which is why we maintain indoor basketball facilities with nets, but not outdoor.
Okay, so this item has like a capital and operating cost, because we'd have to purchase the nets and then kind of inspect them and then reinstall them, and it would probably happen quite a lot, because that's why not just Toronto but other municipalities have this practice. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So mostly, I'd say predominantly operating. We need to purchase the nets, but also the labor to inspect and replace.
Okay, great. So seeing that there is capital and operating cost to this, I'll move a motion unless there are other questions of staff. Seeing none to speak, I have a motion. My motion refers this item to the General Manager of Parks and Recreation with a request to report back as part of the 2027 budget process on equipping all basketball backboards in Toronto owned operated facilities and parks with appropriate nets, and implementing a regular inspection and maintenance program to replace the nets. So that we'll have this information at next budget. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? And that is carried. We have now to reopen number 8, and I'll put the motion up. This motion to reconsider the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The item is on. While it's getting displayed, I'll talk to it. Improving the usability of Old City Hall as a film location. This is a recommendation supported by staff, and it will be requesting CREM to report and EDC to report directly to our next council meeting. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? That's carried. Item. That's the item as well. Thank you. And finally, we're going on to new business. First, I would like to add the item I had mentioned earlier, securing the safety of festivals and large community gatherings. All those in favor of adding the item is a letter from myself and Councillor Matlow. Okay, so why don't we consider this one right away then? We'll go on to the other ones while it's getting posted. Thank you. So one of the items is Now, item 15, follow up on MM 4261, suitability of the Théâtre, Standard Theater as live music venue. Are there any questions of staff? Any speakers? No. On receiving this report, all those in favor, opposed, that's carried. The next item is EC 30.16, supporting King Street West as a culture and business destination. Deputy Mayor Malik, this is your item. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the local BIAs, local businesses, a number of the cultural institutions on King Street West for the ongoing dialogue about how we continue to improve this corridor. It's home of many of our theaters, entertainment venues, restaurants, retail, and businesses that have put Toronto on the map. We've seen also that in our hosting of a large-scale event like the World Cup. And it's a place that we know that we have done some pretty extraordinary things when it comes to transit priority, moving people through the downtown and to the downtown in a much better way. Piloted programs successfully like Cafe TO that are appreciated and enjoyed right across the city. And this is a commitment to keep working to make sure that Queen Street West remains a vibrant cultural and business destination as we have made those improvements, and to bring a report back through Culture Connects on what more we can be doing together. Thank you.
Thank you. On the item, all those in favor, opposed, that's carried. I have to go back to item 14, which is it's actually an item that I introduced via letter. I'm just going to be quick because I know we have some quorum challenges right now. I have a couple of questions of staff. Just what are this address 92 Lapin, what are the interventions at a very high level that have been taken by what city divisions over how many years at this address?
So through the chair, staff have been responding to issues at 92 Lapin going back to 2009. Some of the responses have included emergency response by our emergency services, including staff time, coordination. But in addition, there's been social service responses in terms of providing supports to the residents there, community partners as well responding, and providing rehousing and other supports for residents in that property since 2009. And then recently in 2025, with the work done by Toronto Fire Services and Toronto Building closing the site given due to unsafe conditions.
Thank you. And what is the cost that the calculation that you made in the attached briefing note?
So through you, Chair, staff have identified costs of up to a minimum of $306,000 over the past 5 years. These costs do not include legal prosecution costs and do not include police investigation costs. So we believe the cost would be much higher.
And how much of that, now that when the property was seized, and how much of that was borne or paid back by the landlord?
Through you, Chair, I don't have those details in front of me. The only costs that were recovered were the Toronto Fire Services costs that involved immediate issues that were tied to the property, but the broader social services costs were not at all recovered by the city.
Right, so the property taxpayer had to pay for what ended up being in many years of negligence. And are there other situations in the city that are that you're dealing with, and is it important to get a better handle on how the public is bearing the cost of this kind of negligent landlord?
So through you, Chair, our situation table for housing at risk, STAR table, has at least 14 properties that we've identified with similar challenges. And through you, Chair, preliminary review has indicated that providing better cross-divisional coordination, but also identifying ways for us to, through legislative changes, recoup these costs would be a beneficial action for the city to take.
Thank you. So I'm just going to speak briefly to the item to say that, this is my first term as a councillor. The City of Toronto has been intervening at 92 Lapin, a problem property since 2009. But when I've spoken to neighbors, there's a long history here going back, I thought 20 years, but it's really 30 years. And over that time, there's been significant impacts in the neighborhood, many calls to police, many social service interactions since 2009, but also significant impact on neighbors, and on the vulnerable people that were housed or at this location. The amount of work that was done after the municipal licensing and standards worked through to ensure that there were property standards, fines levied there, and also the now STAR, formerly Spider table, the amount of work that was done to support the tenants in the community is massive, massive. You've heard there's 14 such properties right now in the tens or hundreds of thousands of costs that the City of Toronto taxpayer is bearing, when in fact there is negligence, inaction on the part of landlords. This is something that is a threat, a threat to the people that are being impacted, and also just undermining our capacity to be able to attend to other matters, because all of this staff, the concentration of resources is really significant. So this is something that is very much appreciated in this community in Davenport for this historic problem, but it's something that's happening all over the city, and we got to get a handle on this. As we protect vulnerable tenants and we protect communities, we also have to think about value for money questions here, and making our services whole so that we can attend to all the challenges that people face in our communities. So are there any questions about this item?
So just a quick clarification. So I know that in your motion it mentions 92 Lapin Avenue, but staff has identified 14 properties. So are we going to look at all 14 or just the one property?
The idea here is to have this be a jumping off point for staff to go and do further work to understand the scope and scale of the problem, and some recommendations that can come, including from the cross-jurisdictional challenges, the coordination to attend this. Yes, the idea here is to have long-term problem in very high profile, very expensive and harmful, but to ensure that every property is taken care of and that we have an approach here that's citywide.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great. So on the item, all those in favor, oppose, that's carried. And finally, we are now at EC 30.17, securing safety at festivals and large community gatherings. The letter from myself and Councillor Matlow has been posted. He is not available right now to join us here at committee, but I want to reiterate that this there's a motion in the letter, and perhaps we can display that. The motion asks for some work to be done here to develop an approach to enhance the safety of festivals and large community gatherings in collaboration, and engaging Toronto Police Service, Toronto Paramedics, Toronto Fire Services, and Toronto Emergency Management on that piece, including the permits, working with Toronto Police Service to develop a risk-based event security framework to establish security practices, conducting a jurisdictional scan of other global cities to identify best practices, and working with festival organizers to address the cost with ensuring adequate security. Festivals and community gatherings are really crucial to the vibrancy of this city, and what we are trying to do here is to ensure that they can proceed with safely and in a way that that we are not going to end this kind of experience that people are having in communities. This is a request to staff, and we appreciate their support in crafting this motion. Certainly, it's not just the events at South St. Clair, but we had some challenges at Due West, and we want to ensure that as the festival season continues, there's a maximum amount of attention, as staff are already doing, working with festival organizers. But this is a way to make visible, make recommendations, and look at some reporting back so that we can ensure that this sector, these activities continue. Are there any speakers or questions of staff?
No, just speaking.
To speak, Councillor Carroll.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and I guess I'll put on my police board hat for a second here, to say that while the events were tragic, if there's anything that might comfort people who want to attend events for the rest of the summer, we're very, very lucky in that we have already the framework that this work can begin right away. The Special Events Summit that Mr. Tobin convened early last year was in response to the Lapu Lapu event, as I think the mayor said in her remarks the other day. So safety has been at the forefront of the conversation for some time now. We also have, I hope people will take comfort. We have a number of add-ons to what police service can do in these things, based on the legacy pieces that have been added to Major Incident Command at Toronto Police Service as a result of FIFA. Those, while those are FIFA investments, they become permanent investments in how we can manage our streets and manage free events. So they now all can very much become a topic of conversation and part of the strategy. But I just want to say, because there were more comments this morning from one of my colleagues. We really have to lean into the things that the chief is asking for, because those are the things that are going to help us. We can have screening and metal detection and all the rest of it. We need the laws that are going to stop the flow of guns across the border. We need the laws that are going to mean that when you take someone off the streets, they stay off the streets. All of those things you've already heard the chief and the mayor asking for really need to be, they now become part of a special event strategy. We don't know where we're going unless we can secure those things. And so I hope we can make that really clear with the remaining time that we are allowed to be vocal as councillors and not what happens for the second half of this year. But the strategy can continue because your motion allows staff to go right on working this right now and through the rest of the event calendar for the year.
Thank you. So I see no other speakers on the item. All those in favor, opposed, that's unanimous. That concludes our agenda. And while people pack up to leave, I just want to thank the members of the public that came to depute this entire term. I want to thank all of the divisions that have been here and all the work of staff. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I want to thank the clerks. We're not going to do no jazz hands here for you because you're so great and you didn't allow me to buy you pizza. And finally, I want to thank members of committee. You have multiple responsibilities and we've done a lot of great work together, and I really appreciated being on the chair and working with you. Take care.
And thank you, Chair and Vice Chair as well. Thank you for your leadership.